Hello and welcome to Twisted Britain, a podcast on true crime in Britain with a sprinkling of the weird and the macabre. And your hosts are me, Bob Dale.
And me, Nadine Royal. We're a couple of friends who met in the pub and developed a friendship based on our mutual love of booze, podcasts and pub quizzes. We met in the Settle Inn in Stirling, and that's where we record.
Each week we'll both tell a story of something twisted, a long one and a short one. And we'll decide who goes first.
Based on the flip of a coin.
I nearly got that fully right there as well.
Almost.
Anyway, we'll go with it. How are you?
Leave it, it's fine. I'm good, how are you?
I'm alright, you had a good week?
Yes, I did actually, thank you. And I had a good day today. The best thing that could have possibly happened today happened. Are you ready?
Go for it.
So I was having a consultation with this little guinea pig, just a little health check. And the woman who brought it in was like, oh, I brought her friend with her just to keep her company for the journey and stuff. Opens this box. There's the tiny cute guinea pig, which I'm going to do the consultation with. And in alongside her is a hairless guinea pig. And it was the cutest thing I have ever seen in my life.
I'm going to choose to disagree with you.
It looks like a little baby hippo, and she had like this little fuzzy... No, and she got this like little fuzziness on the end of her nose, and she was licking my fingers, and she was so cute. And I went and like paraded her around the clinic, like, look at this magnificent little creature. She was called Trixie, very cute. And everybody loved her. And my boss, who's been in the business for about 20 years or something. She said she's only seen one before. So it's like a rare occasion, and it was the best.
And you paraded the rare occasion
I paraded, and we took photos, and we're going to put them on our Facebook. She's so cute. I love her so much.
We won't put them on our Facebook.
No, we won't.
No.
Sorry.
Well, I've had a good week. I've had when we're recording, it's just been Bonfire Night, which for anybody that's not from the UK that's listening, Bonfire Night was is a homage almost to when a guy called Guy Fawkes and a band of brothers together tried to blow up the Houses of Parliament.
Good banter.
Which I was going to tell the story of this week.
Oh, I didn't even think of doing that, actually.
But I thought, do you know what? It's one that we should do for a release that comes out around about Bonfire Night.
Rather than a couple of weeks
I'll do it
later.
next year. There's also a lot of names in it, and you know how good I am with names.
Oh yeah, you're so good at them.
Yeah, just you wait till you hear my actual story tonight.
Remember.
We were out watching the fireworks, which were epic.
I saw the photos, very cute.
Yeah, my boy's favourite part about it was just rolling around in the grass.
That's my favourite part of fireworks night.
So he saw maybe 10 fireworks and then just rolled around the grass. So it was great.
Good day out for everybody.
I'm now covered in mud. My jacket is filthy. But never
one
mind.
Of your big jackets.
One of my big ones, yeah. So before we start, we have a lovely family in from Tennessee in the background, and if they do give us a listen to this, then hello, this is your wave. How are you all?
Hello. There they are.
They're playing family quiz night where they're trying to get drunk. Answer questions. I didn't say it. You did.
How was your research this week?
It was good. I didn't actually have any idea what I was going to talk about. I know this is a recurring theme. But
for both of us.
For both of us, indeed.
Let's start a podcast, 13 episodes, and we're like,
We've run out of stuff to talk about. The entire empire of the British, and we've run out of things to talk about in 12 episodes. No, that's not true. I have actually probably written my most kind of detailed notes, I think, ever.
Ooh.
It does involve a lot of names, so I will try my best to get through it all.
Are you going to do like what I did with Lindo Man and just shout information at me?
No,
30 minutes?
I've got almost a story.
Thanks.
I then followed it up by listening to it's been covered a couple of times in other podcasts. And before we started, I would shout out one of the podcasts I listened to that covered it, and it's Murders.
Dixie beer. You guys know because originally
Murders, Myth, and Mystery.
Ooh.
So there's three people that tell a story each every week, and one murder, one myth, one mystery.
Love that.
And they're really good, actually. If I've got it the wrong way around, I'll correct it at the end. But it's well worth. I've subscribed and I've started listening to them.
Nice. Well, we'll share it on Twitter and all
absolutely.
our platforms anyway, so you can find it. I've had quite a good reception to the ones I shared. On the Halloween episode, the cleaning of John Doe and Black Tapes.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, a few people have commented back going, oh, I gave it a listen, it's so good. So that's really nice. Thanks for taking my recommendations.
It is Murder, Myth, and Mystery.
Excellent.
They've got 80 odd episodes out, so it's well worth a subscribe and listen. They're really good.
Give it a go.
So how have you got on?
Yeah.
You sent me your notes to print with the caveat that said I wasn't allowed to read them.
Yeah,
so,
well, I've now...
which is tricky to do.
I've now moved. I don't have use of a printer anymore, so I'm going to have to rely on Bob, which turns out I can't rely on you to print my stuff off.
I've brought you an electronic version.
Well, I appreciate it, but I could have done the same. Anyway, yeah, I did send it to you, so I hope you didn't read it.
I've just changed names and dates, nothing else.
Oh, good. Nothing important then.
No.
It's been okay. I've done. It's a bit cheeky what I've done. You'll see when I get there.
Okay, cool. Well, should we just crack on then?
Yeah, go on. Flip a coin.
Right, I'll flip it.
Tonight we're going to use... What are you using?
20p.
20p, which I earned with my hard work when I went behind the bar for 20 minutes before we started this.
Call it.
Heads, you go. First.
Heads it is.
Woo.
So I'm up first.
All right. Let me get comfy.
You get comfy. So I'm going to tell the story of the brides in the bath.
Oh, I love it already. Brides.
Brides in the bath.
Plural.
So George Joseph Smith was a serial bigamist, an eventual murderer, who was born in 1872 in Bethnal Green in London, and he was eventually tried and convicted of 3 murders. Mm-hmm. Now, a bigamist is somebody that marries more than one person without the other people knowing about it.
Oh, okay, so is it they have to not know?
Yeah, so like polygamy is when there's like
willingly
group of them.
Everybody's
so like people live in polygamy, and I think that's legal in some places.
I think it's legal here. I don't think you can get married.
No, you can't have like a harem of women.
I don't think it's just but polygamy is not just a man. Like I could be. Oh no, that's polyamorous.
Anyway,
too many terms.
Yeah,
Move on.
He was a bigamist, which is illegal in the UK, and I think pretty much everywhere, to be honest, and is still punishable by 7 years in jail.
Cool.
Bit of background there. So George Joseph Smith, or I'm going to start with Smith, because not only was he a serial bigamist and eventual murderer, he used several aliases, which is why I alluded to the fact that we are going to struggle with names here, but I'll get through it, don't worry.
Okay. Every time you say a new name of his, can you just go, that's Smith?
I'm going to mainly call him Smith. I'll tell you the names, but mainly call him Smith.
Fine.
So he was the son of an insurance agent, and he was sent to a reformatory when he was age 9. A reformatory is like a kind of juvenile detention centre.
Right.
He was just a rotter. He was just a nasty wee boy.
A rotter.
A rotter. And he'd be caught for theft and petty theft and just kind of misdemeanor. So he was sent to a reformatory for his education. Mm-hmm. After he got out of school, he eventually spent time in jail for for theft and pursuing women to steal from their employers. Persuading women, to steal from their employers. So the women he was getting with, he was managing to convince them that they should steal from the people that they're employed by.
Right.
For him, he got caught and eventually spent 12 months in jail for that. In 1898, he married a woman called Caroline Thornhill. He used the name Oliver George Love.
That's quite a great name, actually.
So Smith, or Love, married Caroline in Leicester. She was only 18 at the time, and this was the only legal marriage he had.
Right.
He did marry another woman the following year, but I actually couldn't find her name anywhere. I started reading the court records, which we'll get onto, like when he was in court later on, because there's a full transcript of the court records.
It's pretty cool.
And they kind of skip over the other woman because she doesn't play much of a part in it. He was just another woman that he was conning, essentially.
Right.
So Caroline and Smith moved to London, where he managed to convince Caroline to take up work as a maid in several different houses. And for the next 2 years, she stole from all of them for her husband. She was eventually caught in Sussex when she was trying to pawn a whole load of stolen goods and sentenced to 12 months in jail. While she was in jail, he pretty much just disappears from the scene. He's not heard of in those 12 months at all.
Okay.
She was released after the 12 months, and pretty much as soon as she incriminated her husband and said, well, look, he did it, and they went and caught up with him, and based on her testimony, he was sentenced to jail for 2 years in January 1901.
So, but he wasn't actually... He just convinced her.
He was the kind of...
Brains.
He was the leader of the kind of scam.
Right.
and he eventually got 2 years in jail for being that.
Right.
So yeah, he spent 2 years in jail as of 1901 in January. When he was released from jail, Caroline had already fled the country with her family to Canada. However, they never actually got divorced, so he stayed married to her. And George went back to the other wife that he'd married originally, and just cleared out her savings and buggered off.
Oh.
And started on his life of bigamy and fraud.
Oh, ooh. What's a merry
It's an
life.
interesting career choice, but it was his career choice.
Is it a career choice?
I think,
Well, fraud is. I don't know about bigamy.
he went on to marry several women,
Right.
and managed to kind of con all of them out of their money. And here's a kind of rundown of a few of them.
Okay.
In June 1908, he married a widowed Florence Wilson, only to leave her 3 weeks later after taking £30 from her savings, which was in nowadays about £3,500,
Oh my god.
and sold all of her belongings from the house as well.
What an arsehole.
So
Well, she just nipped down the shops, came home and like, where's all my stuff?
pretty much exactly that, yeah. While she was out, he sold all her stuff. There was some kind
He's
of...
like, honey, we need some more milk, but you know how I only like that milk from that really far away shop? You know, the one on the other side of town? That'll take at least 2 hours for you to get to. That one.
Yeah, at which point he listed everything on 1900s Gumtree and got rid of it all.
It was on Facebook Marketplace before she even knew what was happening.
Great place, honestly.
Oh, by the way.
Anyway, by the end of the July, so he married Florence in June in 1908, and then at the end of July in 1908, he'd married another woman, Edith Pegler.
That's an unfortunate name.
She just responded to an advert for a housekeeper, and he
got a husband?
Well, yeah, he charmed her, and they fell in love. And he told her he was an antique salesman. So
this makes no... So, right, imagine this. I'm going to go and put an ad in the local paper for a housekeeper. Next thing, this guy shows up on my door. Hello, Mrs. I am an antiques dealer, and I'm here to charm the pants off of you.
No,
so
she'd answered his advert as a housekeeper.
Right.
He's not just stalking housekeepers.
Yeah, right, because I was like, that makes no sense. Why would you be charmed by this?
She'd come to work for him, sorry.
I see.
And charmed her and eventually married her. Well, pretty quickly. This will become a theme. He doesn't...
Just like in, out,
He doesn't fuck about at all.
Okay.
Does
he use a different name every time?
So yes, he does. I don't have the name he used at this one. He used, from my brief count before I came up, he used 6 or 7 different names. And married about eight different women.
It must be really hard to keep track of what your name is.
It was only ever kind of concentrating on one at one time.
Yeah, I know, but just even if you're not paying attention, like you're sitting watching telly or reading a book, and then your wife stood there going, George, 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 and eventually you go, oh, that's me.
Oh, that's
Hello.
me. Hi there, how are you? Hello, darling. So he convinced Edith that he was an antiques dealer, and he had to go away to ply his trade, and he was away for months and months at a time. But he would keep coming back to Edith with money.
Right.
And that becomes a thing. Edith is the only woman that I'll talk about here that he didn't con her.
Oh, he must have actually liked her.
I think this is the one that he actually fell for.
Aww. Well done, Edith.
During the rest of the marriages, he kept going back to Edith and bringing her money.
Oh. I see, okay.
So she just assumed that that's what he was doing. He was buggering off for a couple of months doing his work, coming back.
Selling some antiques.
So in October of 1909, the following year, he married a woman, Sarah Freeman, this time using the alias George Rosesmith.
Oh.
He repeated the same thing he did with Florence, and he stayed long enough basically just to clear out her savings and sell some kind of stocks that she had. It said war bonds, but I don't think that's right. I think from what I read, it was kind of stocks.
What is a war bond?
So it was money that was given out, that was pulled at the time of the First World War, just before the First World War, to kind of dissolve the British currency away from using the gold standard.
Okay.
So they started putting things into bonds and started using silver as a standard, as far as I know.
Oh.
I knew you were going to ask me this, and I forgot to look it all up. But it was to do with basically trying to remove our currency from being based on gold.
Okay.
So that if they went to come and sell the gold, our currency wouldn't be worth nothing.
Okay. I learn so much every week we meet up.
So do I, when I'm either just winging it or I've looked up some of it, honest.
Learning what different kinds of moss are during Lindoman. Learning all about history.
So once he cleared out Sarah Freeman's savings and her stock, let's go with, he had a grand total of about £400, which translates to now about £45,000.
Blimey.
He, at this point, hasn't really done anything that we would normally cover in Twisted Britain. He's married some women.
It's still crime.
It's still crime, but it's not. He's not killed anybody. He's not hurt anybody yet, other than taking their money. You can kind of boil it down to marrying a woman, stripping her of her assets, and buggering off. Is essentially what he did.
Yeah.
However, it started to turn a bit more sinister after that. At this point, he'd had 5 wives and would go on to have another 4, 3 of which would die in very similar circumstances.
Oh.
Before we cover the 3 that died, the other woman that he married is Alice Reed, who I couldn't really find much about, other than he married her under the alias of Charles Oliver James. And I think you can't find much about her because actually she gets lost in amongst what happens in the following years. So in 1910, he meets Bessie Munday in Bristol, and he introduces himself to her as Henry Williams. Now, Bessie had come into some money recently, and her father had died and left her about £2,500, which is about £280,000.
My goodness.
Henry / George, let's go with Smith, told her that he was a picture restorer and that, genuinely, he enjoyed long walks on the beach.
Fine. I don't know. I always think with things like this, why make up that you do like a skill, you have like a skill like that? Because I just think it's so easy to be caught out on. So when you was like the antiques dealer, in quotation marks, then what if him and his lovely wife are out for a stroll and they, oh, look, an antique shop, your favourite, let's go in, find a deal. And she's going, how much is this worth? And he's like, He was a serial liar. Yeah, I know, but and then a picture framer. What if if your wife turns around and she goes, my mum's just bought this lovely picture, would you frame it? And you're like, Well,
he said he was a picture framer and restorer, so I suppose it follows on the same suit that he might need to go away to do work. Yeah, fine, but I just mean, what if they try and like question your skills and make you do it in front of them? I just think, why make up a more believable lie? Something really boring nobody's going to make you ever ask you questions on. Antique dealer is pretty exciting, if you ask me. Yeah, I find that really interesting. I'd want to know all about it. Oh, what did you sell this time? Oh, how much was that? Yeah, and I don't want to sound horrible, but she was a woman that answered an advert for a housekeeper, so she wasn't. Okay, yeah, she wouldn't know. She wouldn't have known about antiques. That's fair, but I'm just saying. And I suppose maybe Bessie might have known a bit more because her father, I think, was a banker of some sort. Well, so he knows stuff. They'd be from money, and they lived in the Clifton area of Bristol, which even to this day is like the second most expensive place in Britain to live. All I'm getting at is, why make up a job that you obviously can't do? Because he was trying to rob them all. Fine, but you know what I'm saying. I don't want to boil the next 3 or 4 pages down of my notes into he was trying to rob them, but that was about it. No, I'm just saying. So yeah, he told her he loved long walks on the beach and sunsets and all sorts of shit. Oh god. The two of them hit it off, and they did start to enjoy those walks together. I bet. Before not long, the two of them were married. However, Smith couldn't get at her money because it had been left to her uncle to manage in a trust. Yeah. So she didn't have readily access to the money. Although she had the money, it wasn't readily available to her. Well, I bet her dad was quite clever. He's not just gonna, when people have that amount of money, they tend to have some kind of wits about them. Smith managed eventually to convince her to lend him 150 quid. Which was quite a lot of money. Yeah, so 10 grandish. Bloody hell.
Bob.
And he...
Bob.
Go on.
Will you lend me 10 grand?
Absolutely not, no. Because you'll do exactly as Smith did. And you'll bugger off as soon as you get it. He not only buggered off, he left her claiming that she'd given him a venereal disease. Just your standard STI.
No biggie.
So he went away with the premise that she must have been sleeping around and given him an STI, and he had to go away and get the cure for it and everything. So he buggered off.
I think back in those days, they used to just give you like a shot of penicillin or something.
They should have just shot him.
Probably just cut his dick off.
She kind of just not accepted the fact that he'd gone away, but he'd gone.
Right.
18 months later, however, she was walking down the beach, ironically, and bumped into him.
He did love those long walks on the beach.
He told her he'd managed to shift the venereal disease, and he'd been looking for her the whole time.
Oh, on the beach.
But from my kind of reading, basically he'd gone, that £2,500 is still there.
Yeah.
I want all of it. And he managed to convince her to take him back. She was desperately in love with this man.
God's sake.
So it didn't take too much convincing, other than the fact that, he had gone and it was best for him to go, and he spent the rest of the time looking for her and blah, 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 whatever. Pretty much as soon as they were back together, the two of them drew up mutual wills.
Fair.
That basically said that if either of them died, the other one would be the sole benefiter of each other's estate. So basically, if he died, she'd get everything that was his, which was fuck all, and he'd get all the money if she died.
Clever.
Following that, he managed to convince her. Now, this is probably one of the most unbelievable things I've ever read / listened to. He managed to convince her that she was suffering from epilepsy and that her fits were so bad that she wouldn't remember them.
What?
Yeah, so when she woke up from things, he basically said, "Are you okay? You had a fit and fell asleep." And she was like, "No, I didn't." He went, No, do you not remember it?
What, so she's just sitting there doing hee-haw, and then he suddenly goes, "Oh my god, are you okay?"
No, it was after she woke up from, sleeping and stuff.
But she'd just been having a nap?
Yeah.
But she just remember having a nap?
But that's what he was saying, is you won't remember. The fit was so bad you won't remember it.
This is so stupid.
She went to the doctors and relayed all the symptoms that George Smith had told her
that she had.
And the doctor was like, "Yeah, that sounds like epilepsy. Let's just keep an eye on you." So on the 12th of July, Smith phoned the doctor and said, "You have to rush round. Bessie's having a fit." And when the doctor arrived, she wasn't fitting at the time and couldn't remember doing so.
Yeah.
But Smith convinced them both that she had just had a fit and that she was, she'd just gotten over it.
Right.
The doctor obviously just went away going, "Well, okay, fair enough." But the next day, Smith contacted the doctor again to tell him his wife had died of a fit in the bath.
Shut up.
So the doctor rushed round and confirmed that she was dead. Her face was still submerged in the bath, and her feet were out of the end of the bath above the taps.
She must have been tall.
Smith had said, "No, I'm going to actually. I put a bit in here about it later on. The baths weren't very long.
Oh, okay.
So there's a whole bit in the court case at the end that they look at the baths, and we'll get to that.
Love this.
So yeah, she was. Her face was still submerged under the bath, and her feet were out the end of it.
Which is weird in itself. If I walked in on anybody, I was going to say on my wife, but on anybody, if I walked in on somebody in the bath having a fit, or even if they'd stopped having the fit and were already dead, probably the first thing I'd do would be to hoik their head back up out the water and be like, "Oh shit, are you actually dead?" That's weird to leave them like that.
Yeah, that's if you just weirdness. Walked in it and you hadn't had any part in it.
Yeah, I know, but that in itself is already surely going to cause suspicion.
So Smith's kind of alibi was that he'd gone to the shops and come back and just found her in the bath dead.
Right.
The kind of real kicker here is that the bath she was in, they'd only purchased a few days beforehand. It was a cast iron bath that they bought from a...
Lovely.
Kind of claw feet and all the whole thing.
That's the dream.
And he'd even sent Bessie down to negotiate the price.
Oh.
So she'd got it cheaper than him. So she basically bartered for her murder weapon.
Blimey. It's a bit shit, isn't it?
He was a bit of an ass when it came to the funeral. He was a tight bastard and had bought the cheapest coffin available and didn't even spring for a plot for her. She got buried in a pauper's grave, which is just a mass grave where a load of people that didn't know each other would just get dumped in the ground.
Bessie.
He was questioned about questions about it at the time.
Yeah.
But in the doctor's opinion, her death was registered as death by misadventure.
Misadventure?
And he inherited the whole fortune.
My goodness.
Just over a year later, in November 1913, he met Alice Burnham. And after a whirlwind romance, they married, this time as John Smith. They waited a month to have their honeymoon. So they had their honeymoon in the December of 1913. But on their actual wedding day, the two of them had visited the doctor so that she could be assessed for a life insurance policy.
Oh, come on.
Which she passed with flying colours and was insured for £500.
Oh.
So for their honeymoon, they've got a bed and breakfast. No, sorry, I've written bed and breakfast, but actually I'd correct that to a guest house.
Okay.
In Blackpool, owned by Mr. and Mrs. Crosley.
Okay.
Now remember Mr. and Mrs. Crosley.
Mr. and Mrs. Crosley.
It wasn't the first guest house they'd looked at. They looked at one and turned it down because it didn't have a bathroom.
Oh, no.
On the evening of Friday, the 12th of December, Mrs. Crosley noticed that there was water coming through the ceiling of the kitchen.
Oh.
And the bathroom was directly above it. At the same time, Smith appeared in the kitchen and spoke to Mrs. Crosley about being out getting some eggs. Presumably just to give himself an alibi that he hadn't been there.
Yeah.
Shortly afterwards, he went upstairs and, in quotation marks, discovered his wife dead.
Stop using the bath. So obvious.
So the coroner's decision on the death was that she had fainted and drowned in the bath. So because...
What, with it running? Why was it overflowing?
Don't know. But because it was seen as she fainted and died of drowning, he got the full payout in the life insurance.
This is just stupidity. Although I suppose they don't know he's the same person though, do they? Because he's now John Smith.
Exactly.
I got it, I'm with you.
Yeah, good. Glad you've caught on. Alice managed to be married to him for about a month before she died. Mm-hmm. However, his next wife wasn't quite so lucky. Margaret Lofty wouldn't survive 24 hours.
For goodness sake.
He and Margaret met, this time using the alias of John Lloyd, in the ironically named town of Bath. In the November of the following year, 1914, they had managed to secure a life insurance policy on Margaret of £700. However, Margaret would be... Sorry, I've written this kind of funnily. They basically married in the November of the following year, having already secured the life insurance policy. Right. The day after they were married, Margaret would be dead. The bride and groom travelled to London and lodged in rooms at Highgate, and the landlady testified that she heard some splashing upstairs, followed by a sigh, and some loud music coming from the sitting room. There, she discovered Mr. Lloyd Smith playing a hymn on the organ.
Weird. Do you want to give us a hymn? Last time you tried to give us a hymn, you sang some like weird little tune.
Like some Sanctus Dominus.
What?
I'll show you that joke when we're not recording. He was basically playing the organ so that he was trying to convince the landlady that he'd just been there the whole time. He wasn't upstairs when she was having a bath. He'd been...
Oh, I see. The living room's not part of where they were. It's downstairs.
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely
got it. Shit alibi.
Well, at this point, nobody had discovered her dead.
Yeah, but still, shit alibi.
Yeah, absolutely. So he left the house, and this time he went for some tomatoes.
Classic.
Eggs last time. I presume he's just making a wonderful omelette. He had gone to see the landlady to get in, but because he didn't have his key, and she'd let him into their house, and they discovered the drowned body
together
of his wife, so that he obviously wasn't there at the time. Again, another cheap funeral followed.
It's not like he's not got the money to give them a nice funeral.
No, not at all.
What shit.
But he didn't give a fuck about them.
Yeah, obviously not, no.
He went to cash in the life insurance policy. This time, however, it was delayed because there was an inquest into her death.
He must have been shitting it
and the inquest was delayed for a month because one of the people that they were trying to get to speak at the inquest was ill. However, this time his luck had properly run out because the death had made the papers this time. The News of the World, quality newspaper, I think it was back then.
Yeah, probably.
Ran a story about a woman dying in the bath in the house in Highgate, and Mr. Crosley read the story. He noticed similarities in the case and wrote to the police, saying to Scotland Yard, saying that it was quite suspicious that the deaths were like incredibly similar to Alice that had been in his boardings, and that a Mr. Smith had been there too. Both deaths were similar. The husbands had different names, but they were both newlyweds. A police investigation followed.
Good for you, Mr. Crosley.
And the kind of police looked into it and found all these similarities together. That there was all these things about the baths, like I said earlier, that they weren't big enough for a grown woman, like an adult woman, to have just drowned in. They were
to like sunk down into.
Exactly. It's not like it would have been a massive kind of...
Because, like, let's face it, if you're in the bath and it's like that short, especially, not for me because I'm really short, so I struggle to do this, but if you're a normal human having a bath, you put your feet like at the tap end with your feet resting against like the bottom end of the bath. So for you to have like sunk right down into it and have your legs sticking up and out at the taps, that'd take like quite a lot of... That'd take some fit. Like, why would your legs go flying out the other end?
Yep.
It's just stupid.
I'm glad that you've caught on and you're even moving ahead here. So yeah, the police investigation had a look at it. The baths weren't long enough for the women for a grown woman to just drown in, and there was enough similarities between the cases for the police to be convinced that there was some kind of foul play involved, and they would have their chance to question at least one of the humans' husbands. However, we know it was all of the husbands that they were questioning, but the police at that point weren't overly certain. They just had this letter from Mr. Crosley that said, "This is odd."
Yep.
So due to the delay in the inquest, the police had time to contact the insurance company and organise to be there when John Lloyd Smith came in to collect his payout, for lack of a better word, I suppose.
Shit.
When he arrived to collect his money, he was questioned by Scotland Yard to see if he was John Lloyd, which he confirmed. But when he was asked if he was John Smith, he said, No, absolutely, I'm not John Smith, I'm John Lloyd. But they felt there was enough kind of oddness about this that they arrested him, not charged him, they took him into custody. At this point, they had to prove there was foul play, and they brought in pathologist Bernard Spilsbury. Now, he features in other big cases. He's quite a infamous pathologist. He was part of the Dr. Crippen case.
Cool.
And all that kind of stuff. And he spent ages working with the baths, looking at them and trying to work out how would they drown when there was no marks on them.
Because,
like, how's he done this?
Fair enough, kind of, for the first one, where it's meant to be you've had an epileptic fit, because I suppose your legs could spaz out and like go flying out the bath and you sank down into it and then your legs couldn't get back in again because the weight of your body stopping them from pushing themselves back in and stuff, fine. But then the other two, it's just meant to be one fainted. So
at this point, they were only collating two
I'm
cases,
just saying, like,
but the third one does come...
In terms of his story...
The third one comes into play because somebody else comes up forward, and I haven't put in here how the other ones come forward because I'm aware that it's quite...
vague.
There's a lot to go on anyway. Right. Spilsbury was a genius. He really was. I'm going to look into him a bit more. And he actually brought in a bunch of female divers.
Oh, cool.
And asked them to get in the bath because they would be incredibly comfortable in the water.
Yeah.
And he basically tried to drown them with their consent.
Yeah.
And he couldn't find any way of doing it without leaving a mark on them. Now, all of the women that had been found dead in the baths there was no marks on them. One of them, I think, had a bruise on the elbow, but the rest of there was no signs of struggle. The Crosleys hadn't heard anything. Yeah. So they were like, "What? How has this happened?" One of his assistants...
one of Spilsbury's assistants.
Yeah. So he tried everything. He literally tried to force them under the water. He tried everything, but everything left some kind of mark on the body, or would have left a mark on the body, or resulted in enough noise to
alert somebody,
or splashing everywhere, or something. One of his assistants, however, on a whim, grabbed the ankles of one of the women unexpectedly.
Oh, that's so horrible.
And dragged them underwater.
Oh.
The rush of water up the nose and in the mouth caused them to pass out instantly, to the extent that it took the doctor on site 30 minutes to bring the diver back to life. Now,
good job, assistant.
So there's a thing that is basically, there's the nerve at the back of your throat that if you apply enough pressure to it, it causes you to pass out.
Oh, shit.
And the theory is that the rush of water up the nose and in the mouth
just like whacks you right there.
Would put enough pressure on this, like in a sudden moment, to make you pass out.
Oh my god.
So you would drown with no signs of struggle. So that's, the theory being that none of these women would have expected anything. So
no, like your husband's there chatting to you while you're having a bath. What? So what?
Yeah, exactly. So you're in the bath, your husband comes
He's like,
in,
give me
having
your
a
feet,
blather.
I'll give you a lovely little foot massage there.
Whip.
Yeah.
Pulls you by the ankles, you go underwater, drown.
Shit. That's giving me a whole new fear.
Sorry about that. They took him to trial for the murder of...
There's nothing you could do either, because if your feet are up in the air, even if you managed to get a purchase, even if you hadn't passed out, if you managed to get a purchase on the bathroom, if your feet in there, you aren't getting out unless you've got like super abdo muscles going.
So there is a documentary I watched about this, and they got a girl in a bath without any water in it, and they pulled her ankles and held her ankles up and asked her to sit up, and she couldn't.
Yeah, just can't do it.
And
then
that's an
the
empty bath.
weight of water on you, you're fucked. Ugh.
So they took Smith to trial for the murder of Margaret on the 22nd of June, 1915.
Margaret was the last one.
She was the last one. Now, we've said before that in British court systems, they only try you for one murder. They don't try you for all of them. However, this was
stupid.
This is the first case ever, another first for me,
woohoo,
that they were allowed to submit facts from another case. So they were trying him for Margaret's murder, but they submitted the evidence from the other scenes to kind of enforce the fact. Now, they went even further in the court that Spilsbury took the jury into another room with a woman in a bath.
Oh, and showed them
exactly what happened.
That's fucking cool.
To the point that even the woman in the tub, though she was expecting it, still passed out.
Oh my god.
It took the jury at the end of the case 22 minutes to find Smith guilty of murder on July the 1st.
That's a bit too long.
22 minutes, it's probably just drink a cup of tea and go, guilty?
Yeah, and have a wee natter. Can you believe?
He was executed on the 13th of August, 1915, with his last words to the hangman being, "I am innocent."
Oh.
So it's kind of, I suppose it's kind of the story basically is a man that was desperate for money. Now, there's other bits and pieces that I didn't put in there that they go, he had failed businesses and he tried to go straight and he was trying to do a furniture business and he ran out of money and all that kind of pish. I didn't put any of that in
because... Who gives a fuck? You still murdered people.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't put any of that in because it was just a case of he was just a greedy guy that didn't want to do anything other than just fuck these women over for their cash.
Nasty bastard.
Another bad bastard, yeah. Really interesting. Like, it's probably one of the first stories I've ever looked at that involves like a pathologist having to prove something rather than them just going, "I've got a bullet" or "I've got a..." Like, the evidence isn't obvious.
Yeah. That was like really clever, the way that they caught them. Ugh. Do you know, actually, when I was younger, and in Helensburgh there's not much to do, to be honest, and there's a big public swimming pool, and I used to go swimming once or twice a week with all my pals. It was just like a usual hobby. And
Did anyone hold your ankles?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say, is like my mate Chris, and I'll never forgive him for it, I still remember it was him. Fuck you, Chris. I'd say your surname, but let's not. But like because it's a very distinct surname. But fuck you, because I remember swimming around, and we used to like go in the big pool and do lengths and stuff and piss about and go on the float when they brought the float out, like classic British pool time fun. And then we'd go in the like wee shallow pool, the wee kiddies pool, just to like chill out and chat and stuff.
And it's always warmer.
Always warmer. Don't know if it's meant to be or if it's just
piss.
It's just piss. But we're all chilling in there, and I was like lying on my back, floating around in the shallow end, and he like grabbed me by the ankles and like pulled me around because thought it'd be like a fun game, but my head just like, no matter how much I tried to keep my arms going, my head just like was under the water constantly, and it was absolute. I thought I was gonna drown. Honestly, it was horrible.
Absolutely petrifying.
And he never did it again.
I suppose
imagine being in a bath and it's your husband. I can't. Well, like, at least you pass out.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. I suppose that at least the saving grace there is that
passing out instantly, so it'd be over quickly for you, I suppose. But my God, that's terrifying. I'm never having a bath in front of anybody ever again.
So that is the case of George Joseph Smith.
Also known as Love, also known as Smith again, also known as...
Rose at times, this, that, and the next thing. And I even managed to get through getting most of the names right, I think.
Yeah, well done. No, that was really good. I've never heard of that before, ever.
Neither did I, and I started looking at it, and it appears in a couple of places online, Crime and Punishment, and there's a bit on the Met Office, not the Met Office, I've done it again, the Met Police
you
site.
You were doing so well.
And then I did my usual, I watched a couple of documentaries on it, and then I listened to a couple of podcasts about it, and there's twists in everybody's stories, but that's the best I can come up with the facts for us.
No, that was good. Shit. I'm glad they caught him.
Yeah, I think the thing I took from it is he had 8 wives that they can account for. They've no idea how many other women were involved in his scams.
Yeah, that's sad actually to think about.
Yeah, and then
also like it wasn't even just his wives. It was also all the people that he made his wives con on his behalf.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is shit too.
Just a wee side note of information that I had read but didn't write down at all was that his original wife, that had fled to Canada, was in the court. She'd come back to watch him tried.
Nice.
And stood there as his only legal wife and watched him sentenced to death.
Blimey.
And I hope she smiled.
Fuck.
And on that happy note, we will take a break now, as we normally do. However, during the break, we're going to play a promo for Seeing Red.
Yeah,
who
our
are
friends.
Friends of ours, Bethan and Mark. Hello. We're going to play their promo for them.
And then we'll come back after that.
Yeah, and we'll tell you why we're playing their promo in a minute.
Not only because we like them.
Not only because we like them, but for other reasons too. We'll tell you in a minute.
So enjoy.
Hi, I'm Mark.
And I'm Bethan.
And we are the hosts of a new UK true crime podcast, Seeing Red.
We're planning to bring you an episode of Seeing Red every Wednesday, and we'll be taking it in turns to tell each other about a crime. The cases we're going to talk about will be from the UK.
We'll be covering scams, robberies, murders, and everything in between.
Some cases will be solved, but some will be mysteries, and we hope you'll enjoy listening to us discussing our theories on these.
So, let's tell you a little bit about us. We've known each other for about 5 years, and we absolutely love true crime. So we thought the next logical step for us would be a true crime podcast.
You can find Seeing Red on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. And why not follow us on Facebook, Instagram or Twitter to join a discussion thread about the case.
Just search for Seeing Red, a UK true crime podcast.
Oh, that's us back. So, yeah, the reason we've played the Seeing Red promo there is not only because Bethan and Mark are doing the same thing as us, and we've been chatting to them online, and they are doing a wonderful podcast, Seeing Red UK True Crime. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're listening to us, please do subscribe to them. We're thoroughly enjoying their stories.
Yeah, definitely.
And like I say, the reason we're doing it is not just because we appreciate what they're doing, but we have a special episode coming up.
We do. It's very exciting.
I think we actually have 2 special episodes coming up. One that we're going to release as Twisted Britain, Twisted Red Britain, Twisted Seeing Red Britain.
We'll work on that.
So towards the end of the year, probably as the last thing we release this year, there'll be a couple of episodes, one released on our feed and one released on their feed, that will be us telling them a story and them telling us a story, and then them telling us a story and us telling them a story.
A little crossover for Christmas.
Crossover for Christmas, I like that. That's really good.
Thanks.
We're really looking forward to it. We've planned it over 1 million different Facebook messages. And I think, or I hope they're as excited as we are
Hope
about
so.
it. And yeah, they are much better at social media than we are, so keep an eye out for it coming out. We will post about it once it's come. We have a date for it going out. We're recording in the next couple of weeks, and I'm quite excited about it.
I'm very excited about it.
Should be good fun.
Yeah.
It's part of the fact that there's a load of us doing podcasts that we don't do it for anything other than the fact that we love talking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
and
a bit of fun.
Beth and Mark are doing the same thing as we are, and we thought, do you know what? Let's all be pals.
Why not?
So yeah, keep an eye out for that, and we'll post about it before it happens. But yeah, without further ado, your turn.
Let's get going.
Yeah.
So, I did allude to the fact of being a bit cheeky this week.
All right.
So, I'm on short story, but I decided I'd do 2 very short stories instead.
Oh, okay. Right.
And I thought I'd take the opportunity to do a little catch up on something that I said I would catch up on.
Oh, nice.
So I'll give you top...
See if I remember.
Well, this is it. I was going to say I'll give you top points if you can remember what it is once I get going. So, this is... So, the first story is about a woman called Malika Maria de Fernandez.
Okay.
Any bells?
No, none.
Right, let's go. So Malika Maria de Fernandez was last seen in 1960. She was married to Peter Renbart, who was an executive for an airline and was seemingly madly in love with Malika, having proposed to her only 2 hours after meeting her.
Almost like George.
Not far off. The pair married several days later in 1959. The couple moved around living in rented accommodation in Manchester, but had frequent arguments and rows, which would be enough to make Malika leave, and sometimes for long periods, it was stated. After one of these rows, Renbart moved into Heathfield Cottage in Wilmslow by himself. Nowhere. Why? Do you know what other crime I did in Wilmslow?
I should.
I'll keep going.
Right, okay. Is this like a
shout
test?
Out, yeah, shout out when you know.
Oh, right, okay, I'll butt in.
Right. Malika eventually returned to him and moved into the cottage with him. The reason behind their arguments was that Renbart was actually a closet homosexual. And when Malika found out about this, Renbart became fearful that she would out him, which would then threaten his job as an airline executive. Because it was 1959, 1960.
Yeah, and it wasn't fully accepted at that point, yeah.
So he was quite fearful of that. Sometime after Malika joining Renbart back in Wilmslow, he strangled her to death and buried her in the large wooded area which surrounded the cottage that they lived in. He supposedly dismembered the body and buried the pieces in a trench which led out from the cottage. Malika's body, nor a trace of it, were ever found.
Right, okay.
So 1960 was when she was last seen.
And they've still never found anything?
Still never found her.
That's terrible.
In 1963, he moved to Portsmouth. And later on in 1975, he met Paul Corrigan, and together they abducted young boys and committed homosexual offences against them.
That's the worst gang ever.
Yep. Worst friendship of all time.
Yeah, I think so.
Renbart was sent to prison and was later released in 1981. And I think the reason this is so short, there was just such little information on this.
Yeah, okay.
But he was sent to prison and was later released in 1981. And I presume for some of these homosexual abduction crimes he was committing with Paul Corrigan. Paul Corrigan was convicted of raping, torturing and murdering a young boy in Birmingham. And he asked to speak to police, and he told them that Peter Renbart, his friend, had claimed that he'd killed his wife once upon a time. So he was trying to out him for a crime that Renbart had divulged to him. Renbart was living in Kensington by this time, and he denied the murder completely, and just nothing was done about it. So Corrigan was like, yeah, this guy that I was friends with and helped me commit these old abduction cases and stuff, he told me that he murdered his wife. And the police were just like, did you? Renbart's like, nah. And they're like, all right.
Great police work.
Fantastic.
Almost sings back to the fact that, and I know we've said this before, anytime we're reading these ye olde cases, the police work seems to happen just done.
Yeah.
Whereas it just seems to be, the more modern you get, the more time shit takes.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that's maybe down to the fact that we're reading historical accounts, so maybe there's stuff missed out, rather than with a more modern case like this, you're going to get more information.
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
If you don't know what this crime is after this sentence,
okay, right,
I'm going to be really mad at you.
Oh, God.
So on the 13th of May, 1983, about 2 decades after Malika went missing, 2 workers called Andy Mould and Stephen Dooley found a human skull near to Heathfield Cottage in Wilmslow in the peat bogs, and whilst it was later discovered to be the skull of... Shout it if you know it. The skull of...
Pete Marsh?
No, Linda Woman.
It was the Pete Marsh story.
Yeah, so it was...
Shout out here to Phil at Arthurian Dark Saga, who I think has almost fallen in love with Pete Marsh.
Who hasn't? Best story I've ever done, apparently. So, a human skull was found near to the cottage where Malika and Ren Bart had moved.
Wait, so the Linda Woman skull they found, is it hers?
No, it's Linda Woman's skull.
Right, okay, carry on.
But if you remember from my tale of Linda Woman...
Of course I remember every word you've ever said on this podcast.
When they found the skull of Linda Woman, they first suspected it to be the skull of Malika.
Right, yes, okay. Yeah,
and I said at the time, maybe I'll go back and talk a bit more about that crime and what actually happened to Malika. And this is me going back and telling you what happened to Malika, finally.
Thank you for that.
That's okay. So Rain Bart, upon the discovery of Linda Woman's skull, confessed to the killing of his wife because he was certain that it was her skull.
I do remember you talking about this now, yeah, okay.
So he was already in prison on a different charge. He confessed to the murder of his wife, and his confession was good enough to convict him, even though it turned out not to be her skull.
No, but I think, there's far too many cases where a confession has just led to a conviction, whether it's true or not.
Yeah, I looked in there's like a long list actually online of different UK convictions that happened without a body having ever been found. It's quite interesting, actually.
There are loads of cases, not even just in Britain, but worldwide. Some of the most famous cases that, those of us that are into true crime will look at, that a false confession seals the deal on it. I mean,
well, it's not a false... Well, I suppose it was a false confession because it wasn't her skull and he thought it was.
Yeah, so, I mean, even if you look at the Stephen Avery case, the Making a Murder case...
Well, yeah.
So, Brendan Dassey, no matter what anybody believes, and I'm not going to interject my opinion on this...
let's not get into it.
He was coaxed to a confession where he got jailed for it.
Yeah.
The West Memphis 3 all got done for false confessions.
Yeah.
And then subsequently released based on the fact that there was no substantial evidence to take what their confessions were and everything. So there's loads of cases, British or not, that there's an issue there where you get put in a point where you confess to something without any evidence.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's loads of those cases, and when I was looking at this one, this appeared in a long list of other British cases where confessions and convictions have been made based on confessions even with the lack of a body. And actually, the one I've done before about Margaret Gardner, who was the woman who went missing from Helensburgh, and her husband had actually killed her. Her body was never found, and he did eventually confess, and there was obviously circumstantial evidence and stuff which was more solid and influential in getting him convicted. But nonetheless, her body was never found, and he still went to prison for it. So it does happen.
Yeah, it does. And in this case, it was the right thing because
100%, yeah.
He had done it.
He'd done it.
It was almost needed a trigger to make it happen.
Yeah, so he was already in prison on another charge when the skull was found. It was immediately suspected to be Malika's skull, and he confessed to it.
Okay.
And in his alleged confession, Ren Bart said that he strangled his wife and hacked up her body when she threatened to expose my homosexuality.
Your what? Sorry?
Shut up. Let's go again. She threatened to expose my homosexuality, blackmail me, and disgrace me. Dismembering her body, he allegedly said, was a terrible mess, and he was covered in blood when he did it. And that is actually what happened to Malika Maria de Fernandez. She was dismembered and buried in the surrounding area of the cottage in Wilmslow, which backed on to the peat marshes where they found Lindo Man and Lindo Woman, Lindo 3 and Lindo 4 and Lindo 5 and however many Lindos there were.
And you said Pete Marsh without meaning to say Pete Marsh there.
Did I?
Yeah. I'd like to give you a solid 10 out of 10 there for going back and actually covering something that one of us has said
that we'd actually cover
it.
Thank you.
Which means I now need to go back and listen to all of our podcasts again and go, what did I say?
Yeah, well, and here we go, double-barreled.
Oh,
I'm going to catch up.
Are you going for 20 out of 10 here? Is that...
Yep, I'm going to catch up on another thing I said I'd go back and revisit. which is the story of Katie Piper.
Right, okay, yeah, I got this one.
Yeah. So Katie was born on the 12th of October 1983. Oh, hold on, was that the same year? Weird. Hold on.
Did you not know that before we started recording there?
No, 1983, that's the same year that they found Lindo Man and Lindo Woman. Katie was born. There you go. She shares a birthday.
Random agreement. Random
agreement.
Alignment of the stars. There you go.
It was done on purpose. This was so planned. So in the same year, 1983, a few months after Lindo Man, Lindo Woman were found and Peter Rainbart confessed the killing of his wife Malika, Katie was born, unrelated to those stories.
Yes, indeed.
She was working as an aspiring model by the mid-2000s. And in March 2008, she was attacked with acid by her ex-boyfriend and an accomplice, which caused severe burns on her face and body and also caused blindness in one of her eyes. Katie was originally protected by anonymity. Anonymity.
Oh, God. Now, insert your own word here.
Anonymousness.
Anonymity.
Nope.
Anonymity. Anonymity.
Oh my God.
We always take this seriously.
She was protected by being anonymous, but she gave up those rights in 2009 in order to raise awareness about burn victims, and she appeared in a documentary on Channel 4 in the same year called Katie, My Beautiful Face, which has since been repeated on several occasions over the years and is available on demand all the time, and it has been sold internationally because it's so
good.
important.
Well, yeah, it is absolutely important, and from memory, not having looked into this at all, she's gone on to do loads of stuff.
Oh, she's done loads, yeah, which I'll get into.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's done some incredible work actually on the back of such a horrible thing that's happened to her. So both Katie's ex-boyfriend, David Lynch, and his accomplice received life sentences for the crime that they committed against her. Lynch was a martial arts enthusiast who met Katie after tracking her modelling career and reaching out to her through Facebook.
Right.
Which is shit.
Yeah, that's the sad side of modern social media,
yeah, being
isn't
able to reach anybody at any time.
Yeah.
Not good. 2 weeks into their relationship, the couple booked a hotel room in Kensington where Lynch would rape and beat Katie, threatened to cut her throat with a razor and strangle her, and he stabbed her several times in the arms.
In the arms?
Yeah.
Well, just...
He wasn't trying to kill her, he was just trying to harm her.
He's just being a bad bastard.
Yeah, it's being fucking horrible.
Right.
After 8 hours at the hotel, the pair drove back to Katie's flat in London. Katie went to hospital for her injuries. She was treated at the Royal Free Hospital, but she neglected to share with hospital staff and police how she sustained said injuries because she was so terrified of David Lynch.
Yeah. I mean, that's understandable.
Yeah, 100%.
You try and hide these things when you're scared, don't you?
Yeah. But as far as I can understand, like, he wasn't back at her flat or anything like that. Like, she managed to kind of not get away from him, but she went to hospital for her injuries, and they were apart at this point. Lynch then began to bombard Katie with apologies and managed to persuade her to meet him in an internet cafe just 2 days after he had attacked her.
So he was just, let's carry on.
Yeah, he was like, I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again, I don't, like, blah, blah, blah.
The stereotypical, yeah.
Yeah, and she was persuaded enough to meet him in public
yeah.
to talk to him. On the day that she was meant to go and meet him, he'd actually given her details and description to a man called Stefan Sylvester, who identified her as she left her flat to go to the cafe. Sylvester wore a hoodie to disguise his identity and approached Katie and then threw sulfuric acid in her face in the street.
Well, I know you covered this before, the whole acid attack
Yeah.
thing, and we've said it before, but it is literally the most
Just horrifying.
horrific crime. Yeah.
Just horrifying. This attack was actually caught on CCTV, though, and this would eventually help to convict Lynch and Sylvester for what they did. Lynch received 2 life sentences and will serve a minimum of 16 years. That
doesn't sound enough.
Doesn't really, but he got 2 life sentences, so he shouldn't really be let out at any point.
No, and I suppose that parole, the whole parole thing is like, if you get to your 16 years and you haven't repented your sins, for any lack of a better term, they're just going to keep you in anyway because you've got that, you're staying in.
Yeah.
Because a life sentence isn't a life sentence.
Not really, no.
In the UK, I think other places where a life sentence means like biological life, whereas here I'm pretty sure it's 25 years.
About that, yeah. I need to look into that. But Sylvester, who was the accomplice and who actually carried out the attack with the acid, he received 1 life sentence, and he was told that he'd serve a minimum of 12 years. But however, this year, 2018, his parole application for release was approved, and he's been let out.
What he's...
I think, I don't know if he actually got out this year, but it's been approved this year, so he'll be, like, released.
So how long's he actually served then?
So it was in 2008 that she was attacked. He was told he'd serve a minimum of 12 years, so we're 2 years short, really, of that point. And his parole application for release was approved this year. Well, 2 years short.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
It's a broken judicial system we have, but we can comment but not change, sadly.
Unfortunately. More recently, Katie has remained successful and formed an amazing career out of what's happened to her. She's appeared in a follow-up documentary for Channel 4, released a best-selling autobiography, and has a regular column in weekly magazines. Katie is now a presenter and hosts a show called Body Shockers, where she meets and interviews members of the public who are undergoing body-altering procedures and people who have had work that they regret.
So that's what I was thinking. Like,
yeah, so I've seen that one. I knew
she'd done. So I've never seen the actual show, but I knew there was some kind of follow up that she'd done a load of stuff.
I've seen a few episodes. There's this one where she meets with this young girl, young woman, who's not got a single tattoo on her whole body and decides she wants an entire back piece of a big lion's face. And Katie's like, "What are you doing?"
Well, good on her.
Yeah. I've got loads of tattoos and I love them. But a whole back piece of a lion's face, if I not got one on you, bit mental.
If I turned up to you to the next recording and went, "I'm getting a full lion's face on my back."
Yeah, I'd be like, please don't.
Mainly because I don't have the back for it.
True. You said it, not me. Her biggest accomplishment, however, is her work for the Katie Piper Foundation, which is a foundation that she funded herself and supports burn victims and people with other disfigurement injuries. So, she does amazing work.
Yeah, good on her.
With her foundation, and she's raised, I don't know how much, I wish I'd looked into that, but a lot of money.
Loads.
She is now also set to appear on the next season of Strictly Come Dancing.
Ah, good. Everybody's favourite show.
Yeah.
Now,
so that was a very quick surmise of Katie Piper's life and stuff, but I just wanted to do a quick recap on her.
No, I
said I would.
I'm going to award you 20 out of 10.
Thank you.
For going back on 2 occasions and covering them. It's sometimes nice to look at these things, like when we've talked about stuff, because we talk about...
we flit over loads of things, I think.
We do, we flit over loads of things, and we look at... We jump centuries, never mind decades.
Yeah.
When we're looking at our stories.
Do you know which one you really need to go back and talk about that you promised you would, and I'm still waiting?
Go on.
That the hangman, the really famous hangman.
Albert Pierrepoint.
If it is, but
spoiler alert. I will do the first episode of the new year, and it will be a long one because I will cover his entirety.
Yes.
I have already been looking. I've done a whole load of reading into him. He is an incredible human being, and yes, I will get my 10 out of 10 for that. I promise.
Perfect.
I
think there's loads you've said you'd go back into.
There are, but do you know what? Can I just say, however, great stories. Enjoyed them.
Thank you.
Before we end, and the ones I've said I'll look back on, I have made notes of things, honestly, and the Pierrepoint stuff,
that's the biggie.
That's the one I'll go back
to.
because he spans a period of about 400 executions.
Nice.
So
not nice, but
getting it together's been it will be an effort, and it may be a special where you just have to listen to me, I'm afraid.
That's fine.
You can save yourself a 5-minute story for the end at one point, but yeah, we'll go back and I'll do that again, definitely.
Perfect.
Because that will probably feed into one of our just lengthy discussions at the end, because he has opinions that you and I both agree with, but then live the life that doing a job that you and I both don't agree with. So I think it'll be an interesting discussion that goes with that one. So we'll definitely do that.
Good.
Yeah. Well, that was Twisted Britain this evening.
That was Twisted Britain.
We would love you to go on and review and rate us wherever you listen. We would appreciate any reviews. We are not bothered, and we will never be a podcast that says please 5-star reviews.
No. That would be nice.
It would be wonderful if you would like 5-star reviews, but we would also appreciate any review that you feel willing to give us, because we do read them and we try to get better because of them.
You can get to us on Twitter
at Twisted Britain,
Instagram
at Twisted Britain,
Facebook,
Twisted Britain.
We also have a Facebook discussion group.
We do, which is Twisted Britain Discussion Group. And we have a wonderful group of members.
Oh, it's such
there.
a nice...
It's a really nice, and it's a really nice feeling. Like, although we just slayed what social media would be about 10 minutes ago, our discussion group's a really nice group of people, and everybody there listens to our episodes and
gives us like little bits of feedback, even if it's like not bad feedback. But for example, shout out to Matthew, who listens all the time and comments quite regularly.
Cheers, Matt. How are you?
Matt. Hey, you like commented this week being like, oh, did you change your mics again, because like last week's one sounded a bit funky in places, and like even just like little comments like that really help us, because we want to be producing the best kind of quality podcast we possibly can.
The best that we can, and that you want to listen to. So that doesn't just go on technical stuff. So like if you think it sounds crap, tell us. If you think it sounds great, tell us. If you don't like the content but you like listening to us,
then fuck off. I'm kidding. Tell us.
Wasn't where I was going. But if there's something you want to listen to, if there's a story you've seen, let us know. And
please let us know.
I'm going to jump in here and say that there is currently, now this is going to come out about 3 weeks after we're recording.
Yeah.
There is currently a dig happening in for Susie Lampu.
Yeah, I know.
That I have covered past, and it's one of my favourite stories, because it was actually the episode Mr. Kipper, the episode that we recorded that nobody will ever hear.
Our pilot, if you will.
Was I did Susie Lampu for that, and then covered her again, and they're now trying to find her body, and I
which is incredible. So there's a good case of like a mystery, like a body never found, a murder that happened that everybody knows that happened, or well, presumably happened because she went missing. There's been no sightings and stuff, and maybe now if they do find her, a conviction. And
I will go back and cover it.
Yeah.
Whether they get a conviction out of it or not, because I don't think they ever will, at least some remains or a body gives some closure to the family.
100%.
I'd love to give a shout out to quite a few of our listeners and our members. I'm going to probably start with, if you're in our Twisted Britain discussion group, thank you very much for being a part of that. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, we really, really do.
There are those of us that respond to everything that we do on Twitter. Phil at Athurian that we mention all the time.
We love you.
We do love you. Thank you very much for being... And thank you for mentioning us all the time, every time you see anything. Bethan and Mark at Seeing Red.
Yeah,
we love you guys. We love your work. And thanks very much for listening to our Halloween special. I think probably Bethan, you might have been the first person to listen to our Halloween special.
And also thanks so much for agreeing to do some kind of crazy Christmas crossover with us.
Yeah, we apologise in advance, because we will still be in the pub.
And we will still be nothing but sloppy and amateur.
Yeah. No, we're podcast professionals now.
Sorry. We do have business cards, so that makes it official.
We do. Yeah, well, let's go with that.
Let's stop rambling.
Thanks very much for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
We'll see you again next time. Bye.
Bye.